Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Johnson, and this is the Perpetual Chess Podcast. On Perpetual Chess, I have weekly conversations with the chess world's best players, promoters, and educators about their lives, careers, current projects, and best practices. For more information, go to perpetualchesspod.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. Before I introduce this week's guest, I just wanted to give one more plug for the survey that's up on the website, perpetualchesspod.com. So if you want to give feedback on the show, tell me how to make it better, tell me what you like about it, tell me what you'd like to hear more of. The survey takes about 5 minutes. I've already gotten a lot of great feedback, but I'm only going to leave this open for one more week, so I just thought I'd plug it one more time. And then I'll be sharing some of the results somewhere, so I'll tweet it out and mention it here, but I might make a YouTube video or I might do like a side podcast on the feed talking about it so that you guys can hear what the masses had to say. With that out of the way, I would like to introduce this week's guest, the founder of The Week in Chess, Mark Crowther. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Hello there from Bradford, England. It's lovely to speak to you.
Yes, and it's lovely to have you. Obviously, you're an institution in the chess world. You've been requested by several listeners, and I know that Perpetual Chess has a good amount of listeners in England, so shout out to across the pond. I often get emails saying, you need more guests from England, you need more guests from England, and I agree. That will continue to happen, but meanwhile, we've got a great one today. So, Mark, we're going to get to the background of the week in chess in a minute, but first of all, I know from our scheduling of this interview that you actually had a chess game last night. So when guests have been on the battlefield recently, I always like to hear about it. So how did last night's game go, Mark?
Well, I've been struggling a little bit this season, especially with black, as a friend of mine pointed out. But I played a French, I messed it up slightly, and it was worse. But then my opponent went for it with a couple of moves, and his position disintegrated, and I won in an hour and a half. It was one of my quicker wins, but it was far, far from perfect.
Okay, well, congratulations. It's always nice to get a quick win.
Yes, we needed it. It was kind of a relegation battle. I think we're well clear of relegation now, but we needed to win that, and we had a couple of younger, not so experienced players. Well, some not so young, but they're inexperienced players, and they got us 1.5 points on the lower board. So it was excellent evening all round for us, at least.
Yeah, it sounds like a good showing, and it sounds like. So, what's the team format like for this event?
Well, we play over 6 boards. Unfortunately, one of our guys was sick over the weekend, so we only had 5 players, which didn't help very much. But it's over 6 boards, and we play. There's 8 teams, and we play each other twice, home and away. And that's on a Tuesday night, roughly every fortnight. And then we have cup competitions in between. And in the summer, everything stops.
Sounds like it's enough to keep you sharp, though.
Oh, well, I mean, it's funny because I used to play just this evening league and Saturday chess. So I was playing about 22 games a year, and it's really not enough. And I did up that level to 40. My level had dropped quite a long way. So I started putting some more work in, and I now play another league on a Wednesday, and I play the occasional individual tournament. So my number of games went up from about 22 to over 30, even nearly 40. And it definitely makes a difference. I don't think you can get away with so few games without falling off over the years.
Yeah, I think when John Donaldson was on, he had a very specific prescription, and I believe it was 5 games a month, something I fall well short of.
Yep.
But
yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I do work. I mean, over the years, people assume that I know a lot about chess theory because of TWIC, but it was far, 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 far from the truth. But now, in the last few years, because my level had dropped and I was really kind of motivated for it not to drop anymore, in fact, to come back up, I do quite a lot of work, and I find the apps very useful. There's an app called Forward Chess. I buy most of my books on there, and the theory books at the very least, and so I can whip them out at any point and, look at the theory in the odd moment. So I've actually absorbed more theory in the last 5 years than done in the last 20, basically.
Well, it's good to hear that that's possible for older men like us.
No, I actually think most of us are so bad that there's always room for improvement, and that it's not out of the realms of possibility. But having said that, it is tough to improve. I mean, I got my standard up last year. I found it a little tougher, and dropping pieces has been a problem recently, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and the less frequently you play, the more prone one is to blunders. So
yeah. Well, I think I'm just not doing enough tactical exercises. That's always been what. Even though I didn't know much chess theory, I always did chess exercises, and I haven't done so much of that recently. And I think it needs to come back in my routine. Yeah,
that makes sense. Well, it's always a balancing act. And it's funny that you mentioned about the theory, because I was going to ask you the same thing. And for listeners who don't know about the Week in Chess, I think most will, but it's an online periodical that Mark, this huge labor of love that Mark does, where he gathers all of the top players' games from every event and collates them into one file so that people who have chess databases can keep them up to date with all of the latest games. So it's a tremendous service to the chess community, and it keeps Mark quite busy. So why don't we go back in time, Mark, and tell us about how the Week in Chess got started. I've been playing chess for, I started playing 28 years ago. I was serious by 25 years ago, and the Week in Chess has been around and important as long as I can remember.
Yeah. Well, I started playing chess when I was 6 in 1972. My father taught me. I think almost certainly the Fischer-Spassky match was a motivation for doing that. And then I played schools chess for a long time. And then in my teenage years, I went backwards a bit. I was quite a talented junior, but I never got any coaching for many reasons. And then in my early 20s, I started to read theory for the first time and read magazines and follow the games. At 18, I went to London to see USSR versus the rest of the world. So I saw Smyslov, Kasparov and Karpov and Tal. I saw Tal at that time. But in my 20s, I started to collect magazines, and there was a Shaq 64 magazine. And then I got, and this is important, we had a discussion before we started about the name. Well, I didn't realize where I got the name because I started collecting the games together, and then I just had to come up with a name, and I came up with this name, The Week in Chess. But, relatively recently, every week I got a magazine from Switzerland called Die Schachwoche, The Week in Chess, basically. And I must have subliminally actually taken the name from there. And actually the product that I produce is pretty close to the function of, or the idea was pretty close to the function of that magazine, which was to collect together all the games of the week that were important. But, you were asking about the sort of history of it. In the early 90s, I was collecting photocopies from newspapers and magazines. I worked at Bradford University, so I got the Serbian newspapers, Politika and things like that. They had huge amounts of information and games. They had, they would have a weekly spread with a lot of games in it that you couldn't get elsewhere. And following the candidates, when Nigel Short was around in the early 90s was very difficult, in mainstream newspapers. So I had good information. And then we had Fischer-Spassky in 1992, the anniversary. And that was when I first heard of the internet. I'd never heard of the internet before, but I did work at Bradford University, so it was around. And a friend of mine was getting the games live. He was going to the computer centre, getting the games, printing them out, and we were playing through the moves, and we were astonished. I mean, we just never heard of this thing. And I put it in the back burner. Then I got online March 93, started typing in games almost straight away. It was very difficult to use the system. I know it was March 93 because it was Linares 1993. And already on the internet, people were publishing the games. And I was typing in games from things like Malcolm Payne's Telegraph column and things like that. And quickly it just got out of control what I was doing. I was posting. Were you around enough for things like Rec Games Chess?
I remember that. Yeah, that was
right. That's where I started, basically, and that was a nice little community. And I'm going to come on to talk about that. Hopefully, we've gone through various revolutions, and I think we've got Twitter and Facebook now, and I think we're in for another revolution there as well. But in those days, it was Rec Games Chess, and so I was posting games there. And then I decided, I'm not going to do this every day because it's just taking too much time. I'm going to come in on a Saturday morning to the computer centre at Bradford University, type in a load of games, put them all out in one publication. And that's what I did, and I called it The Week of Chess. And then about 6-7 weeks later, even less, people started sending me whole PGN game files of events. And then somebody called Andrew Angeverden, that's probably not how he pronounced his name, a Dutch guy, he gave me a program to process the games against a master list of names to try and get all the names the same every time the same player appeared. There were many faults in that system, and I've rewritten the program in 2010. There was a fundamental change there, but I still have short names in my TWIC database because ChessBase had severe limitations in the old days, and now it doesn't, of course. I am aiming to produce a full name TWIC database, but that's for the future. But it's very hard to deal with legacies like that. Short names. You understand what I mean by short names? It's like, I don't know, Kasparov, G was Gary Kasparov, not Kasparov, Gary. But the actual processing at least meant that it was always Kasparov, G, and that made the week by week collation slot together at least semi into a database that you could search.
Yeah, I've seen the duplicate names in ChessBase, and I know that, like last week, Elshan Moriarty-Badi mentioned that growing up playing in Iran, he wasn't very well known, so he had 6 different names listed when he would play tournaments, like 6 versions of the same name, basically. So I can imagine be the one.
Victor Korchnoi, there's just so many ways of spelling his first name and his last name that you have to pick one.
Right.
And the FIDE rating list seems the most sensible way of doing it, but it has a lot of faults. The Indian names in the FIDE rating list are a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not easy. They're not easy for Westerners to get right, but they have made no attempt to sort it out, basically.
Yeah, which doesn't make your job any easier, I'm sure.
Well, I've basically taken to just putting random commas in the middle and hoping for the best. But it's not. I mean, really, really not ideal. And I've got a legacy problem. People really want to see full names in the database as far as possible. Obviously, if you've got 2 people with exactly the same name, and that does happen, you've got to differentiate between the 2. And in fact, in 2010, I introduced some. PGN was the standard when I came on the internet. It wasn't widely adopted, so my adoption did help PGN a lot in being adopted as the exchange mechanism. But the guy that wrote the standard, Stephen J. Edwards, then disappeared off the face of the earth. I mean, nobody knows where he is. He was last heard of probably in the late 90s, and he just lost interest in doing it. And so there's been no updating of the standard, and there are some faults in it. And the one thing I decided was, because I specifically identify all the players and do a lot of work, I produce my method now is to take the start list and find the FIDE ID of every player, and then process that against the games. And that produces, in my opinion, it produces the best result that I can manage, at least. But because I had short names and because I had people's names change or whatever, it seemed a pity not to actually put the FIDE ID in the PGN. So that's what I do. If you look at my PGNs, then it's got white FIDE ID and black FIDE ID, and that's something I made up. It hasn't broken anybody's system, but it means that information's there. It means that if I ever want to produce a full name database, then I can go back to 2010 and everything since then, I can process against the FIDE ID and produce a very decent full name database if I wanted to.
Nice. Well, I'm sure it's good to at least have that part covered. Now, I want to get a little bit more into the background of the Week in Chess, Mark. So you mentioned you were working for University of Bradford.
Yeah.
So what kind of work were you doing when this hobby took over your life?
Well, I was a librarian, information scientist. I didn't get when I finished, I didn't get a particularly great job at Bradford University, but it was nice, and it was in modern languages. I used to, as a shorthand, if somebody asked me what I did, I said I dished out tapes to ungrateful students. And
you kind of still do that.
Yeah. And so we recorded Russian TV, Spanish TV, French, German, Spanish, French, German, Spanish, and Russian. Yeah, those were the four major languages that were studied at Bradford University. Unfortunately, that wonderful department closed about 10 years after I left. It was terrible because we were great. I think we were great, actually. We had some fantastic teachers, and it was a fantastic department. So anyway, that was. I worked in the tape and video library there.
Okay.
That was what I was doing.
Probably good training ground for the Week in Chess. And are you working full time on the Week in Chess now?
Yeah, I mean, I basically I used to finish work on a Friday, go and have a pizza, start the magazine, and then come down to. I didn't have my own PC at the time, so I used to do a mixture of using PCs to run a particular program that this program that Anjo Verden only ran on PCs, so I ran that there, and then I did most of the writing on Linux system, the mainframe or whatever. So it was a very strange setup I had there, but I couldn't afford a computer in those days. But we got to about 95 or 96, and really it was just taking too much time. So I went professional. I was offered something by a company called Thoth in Canada, but Yasser Sarouan was sort of connected with it, but it went bust after about 9 months. So it was one of these kind of startup things. I got a very nice trip to Canada out of it, and I still love Vancouver. Love that trip to Vancouver. That's one of my major memories of that. But I went there, and they were doing games, and just no sign of any income whatsoever, basically. And they went bust, basically. And then I was looking round, and Malcolm came along.
That's Malcolm Payne.
That's Malcolm Payne of the London Chess Centre. And he came along and paid me a certain amount of money to just do it. And that's really how TWIC was. I took care of everything. He just paid me to do it, sponsor it. And he thought it was, in part, it was a good advertisement for his business. And in part, he thought it was a good thing to do. And that worked well until 2012. But, the entire ecosystem of the internet has changed so much between 99 and to 2012 that really the business model we had just didn't work anymore. And in the end, I had to decide whether I wanted to continue or not, and it was very, very tough in 2012. But I managed to scrabble some advertising together. But it really would be nice if somebody came along and just paid me to do it, and then I didn't have to scrabble for all bits and pieces of income and whatever, and would give me a little bit of money to just improve the service. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm surviving, but it's precarious, I would say, right now. And this year, I'm going to have to rewrite the website. And I want to rewrite the rather badly written routines that I've done for processing names and games to make it faster. But that's a lot of work. I mean, last time I did it, I nearly went crazy because I had to teach in about 2008. It was clear that static websites were no good anymore, and so I taught myself PHP. I taught myself SQL, taught myself HTML. I taught myself a huge range of skills, but that was that was as tough as taking a degree as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I've cracked books on those subjects, and that's as far as it gets.
Yeah, I was motivated because I thought basically I'm either done or I get this done, basically. And you know, between 2008 and 2012, you know, I think Malcolm was as happy as he's ever been, really, with our cooperation. But things like Amazon, I was a luxury he couldn't afford in the end. I think that would be the reason that deal ended. Really, I mean, Amazon has taken over a lot of the business of a specialist chess shop, and I was a luxury he couldn't afford. Basically, we still get on very well. It was just one of those things that had to come to an end. But it would. I know that chess players throughout the world, and the third world, and India, but also young chess players. There was Daniel Asina Leal has come to Leeds to play to work on his physics, and he's a GM from Spain, and he thanked me for TWIC that helped him throughout his learning years, and this is just really what TWIC is about, you know. So charging for it, I just think is a non-starter. So I have to find some other way of financing my own time to do it.
Well, yeah.
That's really the problem. I think that it's more than justified in terms of its utility, but it isn't really. I don't know. It's not really an economic thing, but you know, I just need money to live on. Really.
Yeah. Okay. So listeners, I know we've got some generous listeners. Please support Mark, and if you make a so he's got advertising on his page, but also if you make a donation to the Week in Chess for a certain amount, he'll send you his whole file of games. So for those of you with a database, that is quite useful to be able to access all of these games through history. And a related question from a listener, Mark, some people who support my podcast, which I'm lucky to have some supporters. I'm also lucky that for me it's not a full-time gig. But yeah. I definitely understand. I feel your pain. I mean, what you do is on such a bigger and I think more indispensable scale than what I do. So hope we can do whatever we can to help you get the support you need. So here's a question from Greg Shahadi, name that may sound familiar. He says, "Why doesn't Mark have a Patreon page? He would make huge money."
I'm sorry.
Why doesn't Mark have a Patreon page? You would make huge money, Greg says. Do you know what Patreon is?
No clue at all. That's probably the answer to his question.
Okay, well, I'll tell you because Perpetual Chess has a Patreon page. I know that Daniel King, Grandmaster Daniel King, has a Patreon page. GM Nicholas Husenbeth, I don't know if I said his name correctly, but talented young German Grandmaster. There's basically it's a way for people to support independent art or projects. Yep. And there's different donation tiers where you can offer certain things to people who donate. But basically it's just a platform where you can share content with people who support your endeavors. So it is something to keep in mind, and we can talk about it more offline. But I guess we have the answer to Greg's question.
Yeah, it was funny. While I was waiting to do this broadcast, I was reading about a comedy website that's gone offline, or everybody's been sacked at least. And one of the people on there was saying, "Well, Facebook have taken all our hits, so they basically share our content, but they don't. But they take all our advertising revenue, and if we don't put things on Facebook, then nobody actually gets to see it at all." And I think in general, there's a problem with content creators getting paid to do anything. Musicians, comedians, all high quality journalism. The whole thing is becoming a mishmash of, and the income is all being sucked out of it by very major corporations. I mean, I've kept things on my website. I've kept my website as simple as possible, and one of the things I aim to do next year is to simplify the website even more, I think, and just have very short stories so people could come to the website and see what's going on the day and can grab the games. I have done everything in the business. I've done, like I say, I've designed the website. It's not a great design, but it's done, and I've programmed the website. I've written articles, some great, some really not very good, and I've gone to events. I've taken photos, mostly bad. I've done everything in the business at one time or another, and I think the direction I want to go now, I can't compete with the professional writers, but what I can compete with is design and what I find useful, and I think that's the direction I'm hoping to go in there. And it's a difficult business to actually make it pay. Viewership goes up and down. The website gets decent viewers. It was better the year before. Maybe it'll be better this year with the World Championship. Who knows? It's a very tricky business to keep this kind of thing going. It really is.
Yeah. There's this tech writer named Kevin Kelly who has this kind of famous dictum where he says that in order for a project to be sustainable, you need to have 1,000 true fans. So, these writers that I like Tim Ferriss and Seth Godin, these business / motivational type writers, they often repeat that and say, if you have that many fans, you can make a living. But I'm not so sure that that's true. Like as you were saying about the big tech companies, they just suck up so much oxygen and so many resources that there's not automatically a way to monetize something when you're a small scale niche project and you're independent. So listeners and me, since I've started the podcast, I've myself realized the need to support independent content more than I did. There were things that I consumed that didn't necessarily support and didn't just think about it, didn't even give it a second thought. But once you're on the other side, you really grow to appreciate how tough it can be.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I downloaded a program the other day. It did exactly what it said on the tin. And I would never have... I just thought, he's asking 18 quid for this. And it does exactly what I want. It's just saved me an absolute bloody fortune.
Right.
So I took my minute out to pay for it, and there's another app, a chess app, Follow Chess, and he was saying, "I'll give it free," And I thought, well, what are you asking? £30 for life or whatever? I'll just pay you the money.
Yeah.
And people should think about that. And I do get that the donations have made the difference between maybe really having to give up or find another job or whatever. I mean, I would love to be involved in a large project where I could just give the benefit of my experience and whatever. I do like my own independence. It has to be said. I think I would struggle to actually go back into a full-time workplace, but I've got a wealth of experience in this business now, and I'm sure that with the right project, I could contribute to that. And of course, I'd want to get paid.
Right.
Doing your tightrope acts really is in a very, very harsh time, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, I think listeners get the picture. Especially if you use the Week in Chess, you should support Mark's efforts. And if anyone out there listening has, can put his talents to use, please do so. But so you mentioned you've made many amazing contacts in the chess world, and I know you must be pretty plugged in. So, Mark, listeners always like to hear stories about meetings with famous chess players or brushes with them. Do you have any especially memorable meetings? I'm sure being in England and lots of events in London, have you crossed paths with anyone of note?
Well, I've crossed paths with Anand. Everybody's terribly nice. I mean, Topalov, wonderfully nice. I went to Frankfurt and I met Anand and Topalov there. They were both, oh, hi, we use Yostaf all the time. It's absolutely fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. I've met Anand a couple of times before that. I mean, he wouldn't have known me. I met him at the British Championships where he did very, very badly. When he was very young, he was around the time that he lost in 5 moves because he repeated some theory that was just wrong. And I confused him with Murshid at the time, who was actually leading the event. He said, "No, I'm Anand, who blunders pieces all the time." and then I went to this rather strange event in 92, 93 in Prestwich with Adams, Anand, and all that. And Anand was and Norwood, and Anand was doing juvenile things like rearranging the letters of people's names to make other words and things on. It was a very amateur event in some kind of business headquarters. I went because Bronstein was there, and he signed my copy of Zurich 53.
Oh,
but
wow!
It was just like, what are these people doing on this in this industrial estate playing chess? It was just bizarre. I mean, USSR versus the rest of the world was famously held in London on a building site, and I met Bernard Cafferty at the bus stop, and we went to try and find this venue. And Tarl was there, and I just sat opposite Tarl and took it in really as he chain smoked his way through the game.
Right.
And I was looking at the board, and I was thinking, you could win a pawn there. And he played the combination that I saw, and then Murray Chandler made him suffer for many hours for this pawn, for his draw. So, yeah, I'm trying to think what's memorable. Kasparov, I've been around Kasparov a few times. He did a press conference in London about the time that Geller died, and we just got into a conversation, and he said, well, you know that in the 1990 match, the anti-Marshall, that came from Geller. I asked Geller what would he do about the Marshall, and it was Geller that told Kasparov he should play the anti-Marshall, and obviously a little bit more than that.
Right.
He was obviously, I mean, it was obvious that Kasparov very much respected Geller as a theoretician and whatever. I don't know. The other thing is I've been many times to Vaikanze. The organisers invited me, and eventually I went. and I haven't been for 3 or 4 years, and I'd love to go back. I really would. I mean, it's winter and everybody complains that it's cold and horrible, but it's always a few degrees warmer than Bradford, where I live. And it's just nice to get away.
Yeah, whenever they show those pictures of the top players playing with the sea in the background, it always makes me want to go. It looks so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if the weather's horrible, it is not a bad. It's a seaside village. It's got a couple of nice pubs. It's got a pizza place and whatever, and lots of chess players. What's not to like, really? Yeah,
exactly. So do you travel much to play, or you pretty much keep it to your local leagues?
I'm a very, very, very home boy at the moment. I don't even have a passport, but I would like to get away with more. A few years ago, when in the process of improving my chess, I got my chess up to a decent standard. I became a gold member of the English Chess Federation in order to play some congresses, but I haven't actually got round to doing it yet. We have something called the 4NCL congresses. They're 5-rounders that are internationally rated, and they're local. Some Wakefield and Harrogate. I have no real excuse. I should be playing some of these events, but there you go.
Yeah. Well, you do spend a lot of time on chess, as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, but playing is different. I mean, over the years, people say, "Oh, you spend all this time on chess." I really don't. I mean, it's a data processing operation.
Right. Yeah.
It's not chess.
Yeah, and I gather you don't have much time to take like leisurely looks at games and stuff like that.
No, I mean, what I would say, what has been revolutionized is that when I was growing up, you'd occasionally peek over at a post-mortem between two players, and you'd sometimes learn a secret. But, I mean, certainly 5 or 6 years ago, we had detailed press conferences where you could learn so much from the top players. Now that has gone away, actually, and they're much more superficial. But 5 or 6 years ago, there was an immense amount you could learn from the players, stuff that you wouldn't learn in books, about what they really think about certain openings, about the pressure or whatever, that you would never learn anywhere else. But I'm like I say, I think the press conferences have become very much more superficial now.
So what do you think changed?
I think people realised they were giving away too much. I mean, it was interesting. I'm not maligning Aronian in any way, but it was clear to me that Aronian just taught the most utter rubbish during his post-match accounts of games. You put his lines into ChessBase, and they'd be just garbage. I mean, because he didn't want to give anything away.
Huh.
People were giving huge amounts of information away in these press conferences at one stage, yeah. But I think that they've realised that that's probably not a very good idea. But you could learn quite a lot. Really, you could at that stage.
Did you see the video that I think it was Weekendsy, where Fiddler and Carlsen were analyzing a game, and they just put up a 10-minute clip of it online?
Yeah, I mean that's of course one of the reasons you go. I mean,
yeah.
I spend all my time in the press room whenever I go to these events. It was like my dream when I was a kid was to walk into the World Championship press room and see Najdorf over holding fourth, whatever. Instead I got I forgot his name now. A lesser player who was just annoying. But no, that's the kind of thing you go for, to look at that. I thought it was interesting because Carlsen was obviously not very calm after that game.
Yeah.
He was slamming the pieces down. Not in a rude way. I just thought it was interesting that he wasn't fully calm after that game. And he was missing things as well, which is always a bad sign with Carlsen. And then he got it together. His play in the first half was clearly weaker than it was in the second half. That video, I think, was towards the back end of when he wasn't playing particularly well. But it was a very interesting post-mortem. I mean, they're both very engaging guys. Fiddler is the only player I've had extensive conversations with, mostly about cricket, of course.
Funny. Yeah, he's mining you for information.
Oh, look, the man is an Anglophile, and he knows, he speaks better English than I do, and he follows cricket to an extent that I never did. But I'm still an England cricket fan.
Yeah, and he spoke highly of the Week in Chess when he came on Perpetual Chess.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, that's how we started a relationship, because he's always used TWIC, and it's always nice to know that everybody uses it. I mean, I had a conversation with Geary, and I had a conversation, with somebody who says that Carlsen reads it as well. So it is nice to know that people still find it useful. I mean, it has a double function. It does build up into a database, but it also is the week in chess. It is the last week in chess.
Yeah. So
you can just, if you've missed stuff, which, there's, to be honest, there's so much chess going on, it's easy to do, then it's there for you. It is also a weekly publication, simply with the games in it. And you probably didn't have time to see exactly what events were on, especially team tournaments. All sorts of players turn up for a round in a team tournament that you would never suspect.
Yeah.
So that's part of my job, to just round up those elements, and so, along with being a database, it is just a publication that comes out every week with a weekly dose of games for you.
Okay, and what day does it come out?
Well, I work on it over the weekend, and it comes out on Monday. And if that slips through to Tuesday, because I've, it's run longer than I don't go to bed without finishing it. Really.
Okay. Wow.
Is the answer to that? But But because I'm getting older, I do try very, very hard to make sure that Monday's actually as short a day as possible, so that it doesn't run long ever. Basically, I front load it so that I don't have to go to bed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, as has very occasionally happened in the past.
Yeah, it does get harder as you get older.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark. So another question from a supporter of the podcast. This question is from Greg Smith, and he asks, "What is your take on the battle for the FIDE presidency in 2018?"
Well, as I was saying, I spoke to a friend who's within FIDE, and he thinks it's over. He thinks that Carlsen is on his way out, that a deal has been done, and all the major players, the Russians and the South Americans, they've all had enough of Ilzumzinov. I mean, his expenses are very, very high, and FIDE is not doing very well. So I don't have any details, but this contact is very reliable. We're finally going to be rid of Carlsen Ilzumzinov. He should never have been president in the first place. I don't understand why he hasn't been removed before now, but it is over. But, you know, Ilzumzinov replaced Campomanes, who lost control of the finances of FIDE in the 90s. So there is no guarantee this is going to be better.
Right.
But we can only hope.
Things can always get worse.
Things can always get worse.
Words to live by.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so that we'll see. We're recording this on Wednesday, so this will not come out for 6 days, but that may be.
It could be an announcement before this podcast comes out.
Okay, and if not, a bit of if not breaking news, at least rumored breaking news.
Yep.
But and we'll have to see who the replacement is. But at least there's the potential for change.
Yeah.
I saw Nigel's.
I don't think. I think that Carlsen's time has come. The reason he was re-elected was partially because the Russians hated Kasparov so much, and partially because of a lack of alternatives. But Carlsen was relying on certain people around him who've been in FIDE for a very long time for the votes. Now, it seems to me that they have decided time's time. You know, Vega from South America turned against Ilzumzinov. Africa may still be with Carlsen, who knows? But Russia seems to have turned, and I think that's the ball game. And it was notable that Filyatov, who's in charge of the Russian Chess Federation, he was challenged by Carlsen Ilzumzinov, and I cannot imagine he was amused by that, for the presidency of the Russian Chess Federation. Now, Ilzumzinov eventually withdrew from that race because obviously he was going to lose. But that cannot have done him any favours within the Russian Chess Federation either. So I think he's done. Whether he'll have some honorary role afterwards, I hope not, but who knows. It has been, in my view, a disgrace. He's exploited the presidency for his own financial and political purposes, and in fact, I think it's kept him out of jail. And we were in receipt of money that was supposed to go to the Kalmykian people. Any money that he's put into chess has come direct from the Kalmykian people, and not surprisingly, they weren't very amused about that either.
Yeah, that's not a great reflection on chess.
Nope.
Not that us plebeians have control over it, but it would be nice if that weren't a headline.
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple more questions, Mark. So you've been busy. You're on the record on Twitter. I saw you're not a fan of Chess 960. As we're recording again, we've got the Nakamura Carlsen Chess 960 match as the next big event in the chess world. So what is it about Chess 960 that you don't like?
Well, I would say that I just think the opening positions are ugly. It's supposed to be a classical game. The pieces are on the starting squares that they're on for a reason. That there's a balance and symmetry to it. They're just not there if you randomly rearrange the pieces. But I was thinking about it this week. Why did I have such a viscerally anti Chess 960 reaction? It just seemed a bit over the top when I reflected upon it. And I think in part it was disappointment with Fischer himself, because Fischer came back in '92, and then there was an expectation that he might come back as a venerable gentleman to play some other events. And then he came out with this Chess 960, which seemed to me to be a way of avoiding coming back at all, really. And I think I'm right in thinking that, really. You know, he didn't want to come back. He didn't want to lose, just for the main reasons that he stopped in the first place. And 960 was his excuse. But it has to be said that the World Championship matches, particularly, I thought, Gelfand versus Anand, if two players are highly, highly booked up, it's not very interesting, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, because that's definitely my opinion.
And that match was the pinnacle of preparation. Gelfand didn't like it when people said the match was boring. Theoretically, it was fascinating for those who liked the positions they were playing, but it contained very little chess in that match. You know, it was all prep. And that was not a good feeling. But Carlsen, you know, I like the way that Carlsen plays. Not everybody does, but I do like the way Carlsen plays, and he's more anti-theory. But that said, maybe this is the only way. Maybe Chess 960 in another 5 or 10 years will be the only way to keep chess going. If theory is really starting to get exhausted, and people can draw at will with black, then, you know, where do you go? And I was talking. I had an email about that very Twitter comment that I made from David Navarra, and he was saying that that he would really, really, very much like to play some professional 960 events. At the moment, if he wants to, the only events available to him are with £30 prizes, you know, in the Czech Republic, very, very low prize funds. He would like to play proper 960 chess, and he thinks it's good. And a number of top players are enthusiastic about playing chess 960. So maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before.
You're definitely entitled to your opinion. But yeah, Hikaru was also just out. I mean, he's promoting the match that's coming up, yep. but I think he feels this way anyway. But he also said he thinks there should be significantly more Chess 960 events. And I don't know if exactly Chess 960 is the answer, but I do feel like the transition to a memorization contest or the fusion of it with a chess skill contest to me is not as entertaining as just watching people try to play the best move. Yeah,
Nakamura was the winner of the last two Mainz events, and that was the last attempt to have a 960 World Championship, but that ended a few years back. And actually, before I came on air, Peter Doggers was looking for some Chess 960 games, and last year I found this website with a lot of 960 games, and I couldn't find it again for him. But I did manage to get hold of a file of games for him in the end on the internet. But I don't know. We will see. This match between Carlsen and Nakamura. This is its big moment. You know, if people find it entertaining, there will be more. If people find it a bit dull or bewildering, then there won't be.
Yeah.
It is. You can't ask for a better opportunity for the game to display whatever virtues it has than this match.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
And I don't think Carlsen's favourite.
Really?
Well, it might turn out that practice makes perfect, but you know that in the Chess.com speed events, they have one 960 game at the end of each segment. And Carlsen hasn't done particularly well in those, and he didn't do particularly well against Nakamura either in these 960 games. So Nakamura has more professional experience of playing these events from a few years ago in Mainz. And But Carlsen is a very, very competitive boy.
Yes, he is.
And it's unimaginable that he hasn't practiced very hard to close this gap. But as we talk now, the published games, Nakamura is the better of the two.
Interesting. Yeah, because also, as you alluded to earlier, it seems like Carlsen's style should be well suited for it. It's not like his edge doesn't come from superior memorization, but I guess maybe like he does understand the sort of organic placement of pieces as it relates from the starting position more than from a random position.
But there's also extraordinary castling.
Yeah.
In 1960, which, you know, you have to work out what this major rule change means to the game, because kings can move right across the board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they want to castle, if they're on the queen side and they want to castle king side, they move a long way, and that is the biggest difference, actually. But one of the biggest differences. Now, one of the comments that I made on Twitter was that some of the starting positions are practically lost for black. That's not quite true. I accept that the professionals who've played say that isn't true. There's some significantly more disadvantageous positions, but they're few and far between, and nobody's ever completely lost. So I was wrong in that.
Oh, I did see that comment. I didn't see the responses.
Yeah, well, David Novara said he just didn't think it was true, and David's a very, very honest guy.
Yeah, and tough to argue with him if he says something about a chess game. So I guess one solution to that, I don't know if they do this already, but to have, even if there's a position that's like minus 0.7 or something from the beginning, you can, as long as they're both playing each color, it doesn't refute chess 960, as it were.
Well, yeah, this is very, very important that they're playing white-black.
Yeah,
with the same position. So, you know, that at least equalises that element as well. Although, if you're the second guy to have a go, they're playing 4 days of rapid chess. So, I imagine one day somebody will have white first, and the next day the other guy will have white first.
Right.
I don't know the rules, but that would be the way I would do it, and I'm pretty certain that's the way they've chosen to do it as well.
Okay, so Mark, just a couple more topics, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
So what is your chess level? I tried to look up your FIDE rating, but I guess because you don't travel much, I couldn't find it.
Well, I mean, last year I was 190. I'm down to about 185 now. It's about 2100.
Okay,
peaking about 2200.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I would say 7 or 8 years ago, I dropped to 1950, 20. I mean, I was not playing well, so I decided that enough was enough, really.
Yeah, it's hard to turn the mothership around.
But you know, a friend of mine who's older than I am, in the same time frame, went from 180 to solid 195. So he went up a long way, you know.
Yeah. Wow. So do you have any chess book recommendations or resource recommendations for listeners looking to improve? You mentioned Zurich 1953 getting signed. That's one that a lot of our listeners are fans of, and I certainly read it in my hungry years. Well,
I would. Well, Vladimir Popov, Chess Lessons by Quality Chess, I think is just an amazing book. I actually came up with a huge list. If you'd asked me, I could have. I can't remember. I did have very strong opinions on it. Move First, Think Later is a great book. There are some fantastic teach yourself books that have come out in the last 5-6 years. I think it's been a golden era. And whereas I am pretty contemptuous of the teach yourself books from the 80s that I had to put up with, I think a lot of them were very bad. We've got the Agard series of books. I think they're great. Chess combinations. He's written a big series of chess exercise books. I think those are great. But What else? There was another book that I thought was fabulous. I can't remember. But Vladimir Popov, Chess Lessons from Quality Chess. I think you can pick it up for virtually nothing. If you're a strong club player and you're looking to get stronger, that's your book. Because he was a coach for the Kosset-Saver sisters, and he got them from being strong amateurs up to professional women players. So it's taking you from about 1900, 1950, 2000 up to 2300. That's where it's aimed at. I think it's a wonderful book.
That's great. Both that and the Edgar book haven't been recommended. We're up to 54, 55 guests, something like that.
Yeah.
So Jakob Agard's name comes up basically every week, but both of the other authors you mentioned haven't. So nice to get some fresh recommendations for those always looking for suggestions.
There's another book I just can't. I tweeted a whole pile of books that I just thought were fabulous. If I can find that, I will send it to you or whatever.
Okay, excellent. And my only other question, Mark, so you mentioned you're a cricket fan. What else do you do besides chess in those rare moments when you're able to escape the computer?
I don't know. I'm just a naturally curious person. You know, I don't know. I read non-fiction, basically, I suppose, and try and teach myself things, and watch a bit of telly. I need to get myself fitter, basically. This last year, I've not been as fit as I should be. One of the things we were going to I wanted to talk about was Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I found there was a malign influence on my life in the last year, and I think I'm far from the only person to think this. I think it's reached a critical mass where a lot of very, very horrible people are out there, and I'm not sure that those forums are redeemable anymore. Now, I use Twitter for the chess, but I'm not sure that I want to use it so much anymore. And like I say, I think that Facebook and Twitter are going to have to change, and it might be that people just walk away and find smaller communities to start again. Because what happens, in my opinion, it's happened several times. Something starts up, you have a nice little community, you all discuss chess in a nice civilized way, and then after a while, several more combative people arrive, and discourse disintegrates, and it becomes a horrible experience, and the good people leave. And I think that's happened many, many times, and I don't think Facebook and Twitter are too big for that to happen either. I'm certainly using Twitter less than I used to. I've deleted as many news sites and things that I can, and I think we're in for a change there. So plus, I think that from a business point of view, it's better if you have control of your own material anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Now, do you get like a lot of negative interactions personally, or is it more just the general tone of discourse?
I think it's not to do with. I had an argument with somebody in the chess world that's not important, but in general, it's the political stuff that just creeps in. Because everybody lives in this world, it creeps in that way. You know, I mean, I stopped talking about politics as far as possible on my Twitter stream because I imagine that people are as turned off by it as I am. You know? Yeah, I'm with you. I have strong political views that I try not to talk about too much. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, and there was an interesting article by the science writer Stephen Johnson. It was actually about blockchain, but he was talking about how it was sort of a fundamental flaw of the internet that there's no like clearinghouse where you just have one identity across platforms. Yeah. And I know that Twitter in particular has come under a lot of fire because it's so easy to make these little pop-up fake accounts that just ruin conversations. Like I know for people in the public eye, it's especially bad. I mean, you can't like if you read your mentions, it puts you in a dark place because even if 10 out of 11 people are saying encouraging things or at least giving constructive feedback, I mean, when you have the 11th person just saying the most
vile personal things, and I know women get it worse than men.
Yeah.
It's disheartening and tough to keep coming back.
And I think we've reached a tipping point where people say, it's so malign, I'll go somewhere else. And maybe there will be another social media come up where it's a smaller group again. And then people get along a lot better. Yeah.
Well, yeah, or at least more accountability. Well, on that somber note, Mark, I think we pretty much covered everything I had in mind to discuss. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Oh, no problem. Like I say, it's been an interesting experience. I've not done any broadcasting for a little while, but I do enjoy talking chess, and I hope people have found things useful. And like I say, the Wiki Chess is there. If you want to have the games by all the important players from the previous week, it's a free download. You just come to my website, you can get it in PGN format and in chess-based format. The more the merrier, really. Yeah. And just to put in a final plug, I'm sure it's the kind of thing where if everyone who used it gave a small donation, you'd be fine. It's not, you don't need fortunes of money, but support helps for sure. Oh, absolutely. It's what keeps them going. And it's admirable that you're looking to keep it voluntary, not putting it behind a paywall. No, I don't believe it. I believe in public service. It's a very, very it's not a popular view that public service should be there. I don't know, but I believe in public service. Well, on that note, Mark, I know that your email address is right there on the website for people to see. I'll also include it in the show notes. And yeah, if you'd like to come back sometime in a year or two, maybe we'll have a new FIDE president. Probably have the same world champion, but you never know. So thanks for joining us. No, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who supports Perpetual Chess. I spend about 5 hours a week on each episode, and even though I love doing the show, it can be hard to find the time. Without the financial support of the chess community, Perpetual Chess would not be possible. Special shout out goes to my Patreon and PayPal Perpetual partners, and I have finally updated the list. You guys are Adam Vrancoulge, Adrian Gutierrez, Alex Pejas, Chad Hilton, Chris Flanagan, Chris Lott, Chris Wainscott, Christopher Wood, Coach Jay's Chess Academy, Gary Andrews, Greg Shahadi, James Bonastasia, Jason Dunbar, Jeffrey Martello, Jen Shahadi, Jennifer Valens, Jens Green, John Fernandez, Johnny McMenamin, Kelly Palmer, Krishna Gopalakrishnan, Lorraine Dore, Macaulay Peterson, Matthew Tedesco, Pascal Charbonneau, Paul Swaney, Peter Lux, Peter Merrifield, Ricky Grijalva, Rob Lazorchek, Tatya Abrahamian, Tim Seymour, Timothy Ha, Todd Bryant, Tony Rotella, Victor Vrancoulge, Zhao Cheng, Zhivko Stoyanov. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll catch you guys next week with another episode.